My name is Grayson Maddox, and I used to believe in love. Real love, the kind that kept you warm even in a cold room, the kind that whispered in your ear after the applause had faded and the guests had gone home. I believed in it the day I met Delilah. She'd walked into my grandfather's charity gala in a navy blue gown that moved like silk poured from heaven, and I swear, I forgot the speech I had memorized. That's the kind of power she had over me from the very beginning. Tonight, that belief died. The bedroom was dark, save for the faint flicker of light from the hallway, casting long shadows across the carpet. I lay motionless on our California king bed, my limbs heavy, the air thick and hostile in my lungs. There was a taste in my mouth, metallic, bitter, wrong. My stomach roiled, my pulse slowed to a crawl, and my body didn't feel like mine. I couldn't move, could barely breathe, but I wasn't unconscious. And I wasn't alone. Her voice drifted in like smoke. Low, controlled, cruel. He'll never survive this, she whispered into her phone from the hallway, her tone slicing the silence in two. The words crawled under my skin and into my bloodstream faster than whatever she'd given me. My first instinct was denial. I told myself I misheard. I told myself there was a rational explanation. But even through the fog, I knew better. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. That wasn't a bad joke. That was a death sentence, signed with my name and whispered like a promise. My wife, Delilah Maddox, was planning my death. I tried to move, even just a finger, a blink, a sound. Nothing. My body was lead, my breath shallow and erratic. My chest burned, not from anger, not yet, but from whatever toxin she had slipped into my evening tea. Chamomile and betrayal. I remembered the way she handed me the cup, smiling softly as I walked into the room. Long day, huh? She'd said, brushing my cheek with her fingers, pretending she was concerned. Drink this. You'll sleep better. I drank it all. And now, I was here. Somewhere between sleep and a grave. I listened. I told you, she said quietly, her heels clicking as she paced just beyond the door. He took the pills like clockwork. Idiot never questioned a thing. By midnight, he'll be gone. The voice on the other end of the call mumbled something I couldn't make out. Her reply chilled me. No, he doesn't suspect. He still thinks I love him. She laughed, low, intimate, practiced. After tonight, the account transfers. And then we're free. The account. Of course. My grandfather's inheritance. $300 million. It was officially mine at midnight, unless I didn't make it. And if I didn't, everything would pass to my legal spouse. Delilah knew that. And so did I. My mind snapped to attention, fighting through the fog. I couldn't feel my legs. My hands were numb, but my thoughts were sharper than they'd ever been. Rage can do that to you. So can betrayal. The kind that makes your skin itch and your soul recoil from the person lying next to you. She came back into the room. I closed my eyes instinctively, letting my breathing fall just enough to appear unconscious. I counted each step she took, careful, deliberate, like she didn't want to wake a corpse. She stood over me, so close I could feel the warmth of her presence. Then she leaned down and kissed my forehead. You'll be at peace soon, she whispered, and I felt a tear drop onto my temple. Not hers. Mine. I heard the phone click again. Ronan, she said softly, like the name itself was silk. It's done. By midnight, it'll all be done. Then the account is all mine. You'll wire it to the offshore once it clears. No delays. Got it. A pause. No, I don't feel bad. He's been holding me back for years. This is mercy. For both of us. And just like that, she walked out again. I wanted to scream. Not from fear. Not even from pain. From humiliation. This was the woman I gave everything to. The woman I defended when my cousins warned me, when my lawyer hinted, when the tabloids dug into her background and came up with a mess of debts and disappearing exes. I told them she was different. I told them they didn't understand. But they did. And now, I was the fool in a silk-lined coffin, too paralyzed to fight and too stubborn to die. I thought of my grandfather, Charles Maddox, a titan of industry, a man who built an empire on suspicion, foresight, and contingency. He used to say, trust is a luxury. Insurance is a necessity. That's why he structured the estate the way he did, one signature short of final until midnight. If I died before then, everything would go to Delilah. But if I could prove foul play, if I could stay alive just long enough to expose her, the entire trust would lock down, pending investigation. She didn't know I knew that. And if she didn't know I was still conscious, still alive, then I had one advantage left. Surprise. I couldn't move yet, but I could listen. I could remember every word, every call, every time she used my name like it was disposable. And if I lived long enough to take one breath past midnight, I would bring her down with the same calm precision as she tried to use to erase me. Grayson Maddox wasn't dead yet. And love? Real love? Maybe it never existed in our marriage. But I'd make damn sure justice did. Delilah didn't know the pills hadn't fully worked. She thought I'd gone under completely, slipped away in a haze of silence and surrender. But some part of my body had rejected the poison. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was luck. Or maybe some part of me knew before my brain did. I remember the taste lingering on my tongue, something foreign beneath the usual chamomile. I'd felt the nausea rise before the paralysis had taken full hold. I'd staggered to the bathroom and barely managed to force myself to vomit, gripping the sink like it was the last rope above a canyon. Most of it had come up. Not all, but enough. Enough to stay alive. For now. Lucidity came in waves. I was drifting between flashes of clarity and thick, syrupy darkness. My limbs tingled. My heartbeat fluttered. But I heard everything. The door creaked open. Her scent arrived first, jasmine and vanilla, always strongest when she wanted something. Her silk robe whispered against the floor as she approached. That robe. That damn robe. Ivory satin, trimmed with lace. The same one she wore on our honeymoon when she promised me forever. Now it felt like a shroud. I kept my eyes closed, my breath measured but shallow. She stopped beside the bed. I could feel her presence, hear the quiet shift of fabric as she leaned down. She kissed my forehead again, gentle, affectionate. Like I was already a memory she could mourn without guilt. You'll be at peace soon, she whispered, her voice lined with rehearsed sorrow. She wasn't crying. She was calm. Too calm. Then the bed dipped as she sat down, the mattress groaning under the weight of her betrayal. I heard the soft click of her phone unlocking. Then her voice changed, that familiar switch she used when she spoke to people she trusted more than me. Hey, she said, breathless like a teenager sneaking out. He's almost gone. I gave him the full dose. Didn't even question it. We're close. She paused to listen, probably to that man's voice, Ronan. The name alone made my fists curl beneath the covers. Yes, she said, by midnight it'll be done. Then the account is all mine, just like we planned. Planned. How long had this been in motion? Weeks? Months? She laughed, low and soft, like a purr. He's so stupid, Ronan. All that money and no spine. You should have seen him tonight, just lying there, sipping tea like a loyal lapdog. Another pause. No, I told him I loved him. Of course I did. He believed it. He always does. The bile rose again in my throat, but I swallowed it down. My muscles ached, my fingers twitched, and I had to fight to keep still. If she even suspected I was conscious, it would all be over. But I needed her to keep talking. Every word was a rope tying her to the gallows. I just had to hold on. I'll send you the routing info once it clears, she continued, voice sharper now. The second the estate transfers. No mistakes. We can't afford any. She stood then, the bed bouncing slightly as her weight lifted. I'll call you once it's done, she murmured. Love you. Love you. She hung up and walked out like it was a normal night, like she hadn't just murdered a man in her mind. As the door clicked shut, I opened my eyes. The ceiling above me blurred and shifted. I blinked until it steadied. I didn't know how much time I had until the next wave of weakness took me under again, but I knew what I had to do. This wasn't a nightmare. This was war. And I was done pretending I'd already lost. I stared at the clock on the nightstand. 9:28 p.m. Less than 3 hours until midnight. Less than 3 hours until she thought she could claim everything. But she didn't know about the failsafe clause. She didn't know I'd spoken to Marla Quaid, my lawyer, months ago when the estate was first being finalized. She didn't know my grandfather had designed the trust with suspicion already baked into the bones of it. Charles Maddox didn't trust easily, and neither did I. Not fully. Marla had warned me. If you suspect anything at all, you call me. We built in layers of protection. But I can't help you if you're dead. I hadn't called her yet, but I would. If I could move. I focused on my hand. One finger. Just one. I summoned everything, rage, fear, the ghost of love, and pushed it into that single digit. It twitched. Barely. But it twitched. Then the door opened again. I froze. She came in humming. That same lullaby she used to hum when we lay curled together in bed, dreaming about our future. The same tune she used to calm me, to make me feel safe. Now it felt like the theme song to my execution. She checked my pulse. Still soft, she muttered. Good. Then she reached into her robe pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I could see it from the corner of my eye. She opened it slowly. Inside, glinting under the lamp's soft glow, was my grandfather's signet ring, the one he wore until the day he died. She slipped it on her finger, admiring it like a trophy. He'll never need this again, she said, almost to herself. Then she left again, closing the door behind her. I waited 5 more minutes, then willed my hand to move again. Twitch. Stretch. Grip. Pain seared through my arm, but I managed to drag it across the bed and knock my phone off the nightstand. It hit the floor with a soft thud. I reached down, my fingers closing around it like it was the last solid thing in a collapsing world. I unlocked it with my thumb and forced my eyes to focus. I opened the messaging app. 3 words. She knows. Move. I sent it to Marla. Then everything went black again. I didn't know if the text reached Marla. My vision had gone dark again after I hit send, like my body was using every ounce of energy just to flick that message into the world. She knows. Move. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't a complete sentence. But if anyone could decipher that cryptic warning and understand its gravity, it was Marla Quaid. When my eyes opened again, the clock read 9:57 p.m. I had just over 2 hours until midnight. 2 hours until the full inheritance became mine. 2 hours to stay alive. I'd once run a company with 3,000 employees and negotiated a hostile merger without blinking. But nothing had ever required the level of control and restraint I was demanding from my body right now. Every movement was a war. Every breath was a razor pulled through syrup. But the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the rage. The kind of rage that comes from knowing the person who kisses your forehead and tells you they love you is counting the minutes until your heart stops. My wife had tried to kill me. I needed proof. The trust was ironclad. My grandfather made sure of that. At exactly 12:01 a.m., the inheritance transferred entirely to me. But he'd also added a fail-safe clause, his paranoia immortalized in legal ink. If foul play was suspected and credible evidence surfaced within 72 hours of my death, the inheritance would freeze. Investigations would be triggered. And Delilah? She'd get nothing but a trial date. That clause was the only thread keeping me alive. I didn't need to confront her. Not yet. I needed to survive long enough to show the world the truth. Somehow, I forced myself into a sitting position. My joints crackled like old wood, my stomach clenched in protest, but I was upright. It was a victory. A bitter, burning, essential victory. I clutched the edge of the nightstand and steadied myself. I opened the drawer and grabbed the disposable backup phone Marla had convinced me to stash 6 months ago. Call me old-fashioned, she'd said at the time, but betrayal doesn't care how smart your smartphone is. Keep a burner. You'll thank me. She had no idea how right she was. I powered it on. No fingerprint needed. No facial scan. Just a clean line to the woman who held the legal leash to my legacy. It rang twice. Grayson? Marla's voice was sharp, awake, and instantly alert. Is this real? I have less than 2 hours, I croaked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. She tried to kill me. She gave me something. Pills in my tea. Where is she now? In the house. Making calls. To someone named Ronan. She thinks I'm unconscious. I'm calling in the Trust's federal liaison now, she said. And activating the fail-safe team. We'll need evidence. Physical. Audio. Visual. I have voice memos, I whispered. Phone's linked to my backup email. She said by midnight it'd be done. That's premeditation, Marla said, her tone turning colder by the second. That's conspiracy. I need more. I need something airtight. Enough for the board to act tonight. Before she finds out I'm still alive. I'm looping in the Trust Security Council. We've got investigators on standby. They can be there in 90 minutes. I might not have 90. You need to hide, she said. You need to document everything. Every word. Every movement. I nodded, then realized she couldn't see that. I will. I'll move slow. Quiet. If you can get to a safe location in the house, somewhere secure, go now. And keep that burner on you. No texts. Just voice calls. We'll ping your location. I ended the call and slipped the burner into my pocket. I looked around the room like a stranger surveying foreign territory. Every shadow felt like a trap. Every object felt poisoned. That's how betrayal changes a space. It doesn't just make it unsafe, it makes it alien. I crept to the bedroom door and pressed my ear to the wood. Silence. Then footsteps. Laughter. Hers and demands. I didn't need to see him to know who he was. Ronan. The name she whispered like a secret and used like a weapon. I cracked the door open a sliver. There he was. Early 30s, lean, with a stethoscope draped around his neck like he'd just walked out of an ER. Former med student, she said. Maybe more than that. Maybe less. He held a laptop bag and wore gloves. Not the leather kind, latex. Clinical. Careful. They were standing in the hallway like two thieves admiring a vault already cracked open. He's out cold? Ronan asked. Like a stone, Delilah replied. He didn't even twitch. Good. Then let's not waste time. I'll need a blood sample for the cert. Then we prep the scene. The cert. A death certificate. Forged. Fabricated. Ready to go. You still have that ketamine? Ronan asked. Top drawer, she answered. If he twitches again, we dose him straight to cardiac. My heart thundered so hard I thought they'd hear it through the wall. They moved past the bedroom door, heading toward the study. Now was my chance. I slipped out like a shadow. My legs screamed in protest. My breath hitched with every step. But I was moving. I was alive. And I was recording. Before I left the room, I tapped the voice memo app again and started a new file. I turned the brightness on my phone down to 0 and tucked it into the inner lining of my robe. Then I made my way to the guest corridor. There were cameras there, hidden ones I'd installed when I upgraded security after a previous death threat from a disgruntled business partner. Delilah never paid attention to the details. That had always been my domain. And now it was my salvation. I moved slowly past the study, capturing them clearly on the security feed. Ronan was setting up his laptop, uploading something to a secure file. Probably the fake medical records. Delilah was going through my safe, withdrawing a USB key I hadn't seen in months. They were talking openly, confident in my death. And every word was being captured. I whispered into the burner. Visual confirmation obtained. Uploading via backup. I ducked into the hallway closet and used the old panel hidden behind the coats. Inside was a backup server, small, shielded, and connected to the cloud. I pressed upload. 2 hours ago, I was a husband. Now I was the key witness in my own attempted murder. And the clock was ticking. The house felt like a coffin dressed in luxury. Marble floors, gold-framed art, mood lighting set to warm. It all felt obscene now, like silk draped over a corpse. My corpse. Or at least, the version of me Delilah had already buried in her mind. Every creak in the floorboard felt like a gunshot. Every whisper of wind brushing against the window made me flinch. But it wasn't the house I feared. It was them. Delilah and Ronan moved like vultures circling a body they assumed had stopped twitching. My body. I watched from the shadows of the guest wing hallway as they moved freely through what used to be my sanctuary. They were laughing. Relaxed. That was the part that clawed at me. Not the betrayal, not even the plan, but how casually they moved through my home, like they owned it now. Like I was already gone. You're sure the certificate will pass? Delilah asked as they strolled toward the kitchen. Ronan nodded, opening his laptop on the marble island. I've used this template 3 times already. No flags. It'll say he died peacefully in his sleep. Heart failure. No need for an autopsy if the paperwork's in order and the body's cremated fast. Cremated. They weren't just trying to kill me. They wanted to erase me. Wipe every trace clean before anyone could even raise a question. And the insurance, she asked, pouring herself a glass of wine. Red. Of course. Payout in 90 days, he replied. And you'll already have the inheritance by then. You'll be untouchable. I was crouched in the linen alcove, still recording, my body screaming for rest, but my mind burning with clarity. Every word was being uploaded to the cloud, sent to Marla in real time. The phone's light blinked faintly in my pocket. The fail-safes were working, but I needed one more thing. Visual proof. Audio was strong. It could convince the trust board to freeze the inheritance, at least temporarily. But video? That would end this. That would strip her mask off in front of the world. I knew where to go. The security hub was in the basement, tucked behind the wine racks Delilah always showed off like trophies. During renovations, I'd had it installed without telling her. She'd rolled her eyes when I insisted on fortified backups, password-protected feeds, and mirrored servers. You and your grandfather were so paranoid, she used to S. I waited until they moved upstairs. Ronan had a small medical bag slung over his shoulder, Delilah's robe swishing beside him, and I crept through the dining room toward the cellar. My legs shook. My muscles felt like wires about to snap. but I pushed through the haze and reached the wall panel behind the second rack. I pressed the correct tiles in sequence, left, center, right, and the door clicked open. Cool air hit me. Darkness swallowed me. I stepped inside. The hub was simple, a desk for monitors and a hard drive the size of a brick. I slipped the flash drive from the drawer and began downloading the hallway footage. I scrubbed through the last 30 minutes and froze when I saw it. Delilah kissing Ronan in the guest bathroom, right after she'd said she was getting towels. My wife. Mouth against another man's like it was routine. This wasn't a fling. This was a coup. And I was the target. I downloaded the footage and initiated a backup stream to Marla's private server. Each clip uploaded with a quiet ding, stacking like bullets in a chamber. I pulled the burner and whispered into it, "Marla, this is Grayson. You'll find camera footage in the incoming folder. Guest bath timestamped 9:53 p.m. Audio confirms conspiracy to commit murder. Cert fraud. Insurance scam. Name on the second party is Ronan, unknown last name. He's on site. Active. Got it." Marla's voice crackled through the speaker. "I've got agents prepping for entry. ETA, 12:05. Don't be seen. Don't make contact. We're close. Close. But not close enough." Because above me, on the second floor, Delilah was calling someone else. The feed from the main living room camera showed her pacing in front of the fireplace, wine still in hand, face tight with concentration. She wasn't with Ronan this time. No. Listen to me, Clarence. I don't care what the board thinks. I'll be the legal spouse. That's all that matters. He's had chronic health issues. Make sure his doctor knows that if anyone calls. Clarence. My family's old estate attorney. He'd been on my grandfather's payroll before I was even born. And now she had him on speed dial, roped into the cleanup. I'll get the documents to you first thing in the morning. Yes, before the cremation. Ronan's handling everything here. Just make sure the Maddox Trust doesn't stall the transfer. That was the final nail. I captured the call's audio and clipped it, labeling it attorney tampering, Clarence. I felt like I was watching a movie unfold. A slow-burn thriller where the villain isn't just evil, they're confident. Entitled. Certain that no one is watching. But I was. I switched off the camera feed just as Ronan entered the room with a syringe in hand. "This'll knock him down completely," he said to her. "In case there's any last flinches." They were heading back to the bedroom. To finish me. I grabbed my phone, flash drive, and the camera feed remote. I sprinted, if you could call it that. Back through the cellar corridor, up the side passage that led to the library. I had minutes before they reached the bed and discovered I was gone. They wouldn't find me. Not yet. Because I wasn't running. I was waiting. And I was armed, with truth, technology, and every shred of their treachery carved into silicon and code. They thought they were walking toward a corpse. But I was walking toward justice. At 10:14 p.m., Delilah left the bedroom again. I watched from the sliver of space under the door, her silk robe flowing behind her like she was gliding through some twisted ballet. Her voice echoed down the hallway as she called out sweetly, "I'm going to get the champagne, love. One last toast, I closed my eyes for a moment, not to rest, but to steel myself. That word, love, used like a poison blade. And I let it cut, because the sting kept me conscious. A moment later, I heard Ronan shuffle into the room. He didn't walk like a doctor. He moved like someone who had nothing to fear. No reverence for the body in the bed, no caution in his steps. Just arrogance. He muttered to himself as he approached. 2 more hours, he said, checking my pulse with 2 fingers. Then she gets her fairy tale and I get my beach. Beach. Mexico. He'd said that earlier. Delilah had promised him an escape route, probably funded by whatever offshore account they'd set up using my blood as collateral. That's when I struck. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't even coordinated. It was desperation, pure and wild. I waited until he leaned in closer, his wrist near my face. Then I bit down. Hard. Bone-grinding hard. He screamed, a guttural, panicked sound that filled the room and cracked the illusion that I was already dead. I clamped my teeth until I tasted metal and skin tore. He yanked back violently, sending himself crashing into the side table. The lamp toppled and shattered. The room plunged into semi-darkness, the only light now the hallway glow bleeding through the doorframe. I didn't waste a second. I rolled, half-dragged, myself from the bed, crashing to the floor. My legs still felt like cinder blocks, but adrenaline blurred the pain. My body was waking up, but it had a long way to go. I used my elbows to pull myself across the hardwood like a soldier crawling through enemy lines. The carpet runner burned against my arms. Ronan cursed from behind me, gripping his wrist. "What the hell? How are you?" I didn't answer. I didn't look back. I made for the ensuite bathroom, the one room that held my last line of defense. My hands found the cold tile, then the vanity, then the mirror. My mirror. The one I had remodeled 6 months ago during the security upgrades Delilah had rolled her eyes at. She thought it was vanity. But it wasn't. It was survival. Behind that mirror was a secret compartment. It was flush with the wall, nearly invisible. My fingers found the ridge, pressed the magnetic release switch hidden beneath the vanity light. With a quiet click, it opened. Inside, neatly stored, a mini medical kit, a small hidden camera, a power bank, and a burner phone sealed in a black plastic bag. Marla had insisted on it. "Just in case, Gray," she'd said, half joking. "Paranoia might one day keep you breathing." I tore open the bag with trembling fingers and powered on the camera first. A red light blinked on. I turned it to face me. "This is Grayson Maddox," I said, my voice a hoarse scrape. Date: July 19th. Time approximately 10:18 p.m. I am recording this from the master bathroom of my estate. My wife, Delilah Maddox, has attempted to murder me via poisoning. Accomplice: a man named Ronan, possibly a former medical student. This is not a hoax. This is not a misunderstanding. They have openly discussed my death, forged a death certificate, and planned financial fraud. I took a breath, shaky and shallow. I have audio recordings, visual surveillance. This video serves as a personal account. If I die before midnight, they did it. If I survive past 12:01, I want the world to know why I had to fight this hard just to keep breathing. I turned off the camera, clipped it to the inside of my shirt pocket, and steadied myself against the sink. I opened the medical kit and found the stimulant pin labeled adrenaline. I jabbed it into my thigh. My whole leg jolted. My heart skipped, then surged. A fog lifted. My mind snapped into focus, and clarity returned with a vengeance. Ronan was shouting for Delilah now. "He's up. He moved. I think he's hiding." Her voice came crashing back into the hallway. "What? How?" I flushed the toilet and turned on the shower, anything to cover sound, then slipped out through the secondary door that led to the hallway closet. Delilah didn't know it connected. She never paid attention to the renovations. The house was a stage, and now I was in the wings, watching my murderers flail on center. I moved as fast as my half-awake body would allow. I needed to get to the security hub again, but I also needed to make them think I was still playing dead. I crouched behind the wall that faced the master suite and watched through the reflection in a mounted art piece. Delilah came storming back into the bedroom. Her face was twisted, not in grief, not even in fear, but fury. "Where the hell is he?" she snapped. Ronan was cradling his bleeding wrist, dabbing it with tissues. "He bit me like an animal." "Well, you're the one who said he'd be out cold," she hissed. "I didn't account for whatever the hell kind of metabolism he has." Delilah marched to the window and saw the curtains fluttering from the bathroom. "Did he jump?" she asked, voice breathless. "If he dies before midnight, we lose everything," Ronan yelled. She spun on him. "And if he dies after, we win." That's when they split. Delilah darted toward the guest house. Ronan bolted down the main staircase, heading toward the woods behind the estate. Neither of them thought to check the cellar, or the bathroom camera, or the network hub, because in their minds, I was a dying man clawing at life. But I wasn't dying. I was recording. And every step they took was a nail in their own coffin. I limped to the cellar door and descended one stair at a time, the adrenaline wearing thin but my mind sharper than ever. In the cool darkness, surrounded by my grandfather's dusty wine collection and the hum of hidden drives, I sat down and watched the video feed on the burner screen. Delilah pacing. Ronan running. A story told in betrayal in real time. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted justice. But if they made me choose, I'd take both. I emerged from the cellar like a ghost climbing out of his own grave. My body ached from the inside out, every joint swollen with fatigue, every muscle hanging by a thread of adrenaline and fury. But I was alive. I reminded myself of that with each step. I was alive, and they didn't know it. Delilah thought I'd leapt to my death. Ronan thought I was a ragdoll with a pulse. But I was neither. I was awake, recording, and closing in. The burner phone vibrated in my pocket. "Marla, get to the panic room. Footage is solid. Legal team mobilized. Don't let them know you're alive." I read it 3 times to keep myself focused. The panic room was embedded behind a false wall in the wine storage wing. Delilah never noticed the small irregularity in the baseboard design. She never asked why I installed a digital keypad in the tasting cabinet or why one wine bottle never moved, no matter how many guests we had. Because Delilah didn't pay attention to things she didn't think she needed. I did, but I wasn't heading there yet. Not until I had the rest of what I needed. With the camera hidden in my coat, I crept through the east hallway toward the private study, Delilah's favorite hiding place for secrets. She always said she liked the dark wood and tall windows, but I knew the truth. That room had no internal surveillance, and it had one drawer she locked when she thought I wasn't looking. I reached the study and slipped inside. It was dim, lit only by the moonlight pouring through the curtains. The drawer I needed was halfway open. She must have used it earlier when she thought I was unconscious. A USB drive stuck out like a sore thumb, and next to it, my grandfather's banking token. I lifted the USB gently and turned it over in my hand. The label said MTRFF, Maddox Trust Reserve Final Funds. She wasn't just after my inheritance. She was after the Master Reserve account. Funds meant to be dispersed in emergency humanitarian efforts or family crises. Funds only I could access until midnight, when everything transferred. If I had died, she'd have full access. The realization made my stomach twist. She was going to drain every cent, probably within hours. Leave nothing for anyone. No charities. No employees. No legacy. Only her. I pocketed the drive, stepped back into the hallway, and kept moving. They weren't home now. I'd seen them split. Delilah was tearing through the guest house, hoping to find my body crumpled by the patio fountain. Ronan was scouring the woods like a man afraid of ghosts. I had time. Minutes, maybe. Enough. I moved quietly down the corridor, stopping only when I reached the living room. The fireplace still glowed faintly. Her wine glass was tipped on its side, half full. The air smelled like oranges and oak and deceit. Then I heard them. Her voice, low and performative, drifting in from the patio as if on cue. He was a kind man, so quiet near the end. I stepped behind the thick drapes beside the bay windows and peeked out. She stood outside, alone now, rehearsing her grief. One hand clutched her robe dramatically at the collarbone. She closed her eyes, gave a shuddering breath, and said it again. He was a kind man. Pause. So quiet near the end. She was practicing her eulogy. My stomach flipped. How many times had she said those same words in the mirror, perfecting the break in her voice, the tilt of her chin, the fall of a fake tear? I pulled the phone from my pocket and recorded. Her face. Her performance. Her lie. It was all there, time-stamped, geotagged, and streaming to the cloud. At 11:22 p.m., I emailed everything to Marla in one zip file titled Living Testimony. She replied within seconds. Marla, this is enough. The trust board is reviewing. Federal team arriving in 40. Hang on. Do not confront them. Let it play out. But I knew better. I knew Delilah. She was circling now. Circling the property, retracing her steps, retracing mine. It wouldn't be long before she realized I hadn't jumped, that I'd slipped under her nose and carved a trail of evidence behind me. I had to vanish completely now. I made my way through the West Hall to the wine cabinet, twisting the fixed bottle of 94 Amarone that unlocked the hidden keypad. I tapped in the code. 1094, my grandfather's birth month and year, and the panel slid open to reveal a narrow passage behind the wall. Inside, the panic room waited. Climate-controlled, signal-shielded, lined with backups of my financial records, legal documents, and a week's supply of food and water. I stepped inside and locked the door. A monitor blinked to life. Security feed, front lawn, main staircase, patio, guest house, kitchen. There she was, Delilah, standing in the middle of the front yard, holding her phone and screaming into the night. He's not in the garden. He's not anywhere. I checked the cameras. He disabled them. Ronan's voice came through her speaker, tinny and frantic. If he lives past midnight, we're screwed. You understand that, right? Everything goes to him. Delilah spun in a circle, gripping her hair like she could wring out the truth from her own skull. I know. Then she paused. She looked toward the house and smiled. My heart stopped for a second. She turned back to her phone and whispered, I think I know where he's hiding. I leaned forward, the camera feed jittering slightly. She was walking toward the cellar door. No. I reached for the intercom system, then stopped. If she checked the cellar but didn't find me, it would only deepen her panic. Let her search. Let her fail. Let her walk through the ashes of her perfect plan while I watched from behind the glass. The minutes ticked by. 11:34 p.m. 11:42 p.m. Delilah reappeared on the main staircase, sweating, breathing heavily. He's not there. Not anywhere. I don't understand. She turned slowly, eyes wide and trembling. Then she said it out loud. If he dies before midnight, we lose everything. The truth was unraveling her now, and I was pulling every thread. 30 minutes left, and I was still breathing. At 11:40 p.m., the world shifted. Not outside, not in the wind brushing through the trees or the shadows cast across the stone path, but inside her. Delilah came back upstairs with her robe now clinging to her, soaked in sweat and desperation. Her hair, once smooth and polished like the woman she pretended to be, stuck to her temples in damp strands. She stood at the top of the staircase panting, not from exertion, but from panic. She had checked everywhere. The guest house, the garden, the cellar, even the fountain where she hoped I'd collapse like a tragic love story come full circle. But she hadn't found me, and now she was unraveling. Where the hell is he? She shouted, gripping the railing like she needed the house itself to steady her. Ronan burst through the front door, leaves in his hair, a twig stuck to his sweater, breath coming in short, frantic bursts. He's not in the woods. He's not by the east trail. I even checked near the neighbor's gate, he snapped, stepping inside and slamming the door shut behind him. Delilah turned on him with wild eyes. You said he was sedated. You said he couldn't move. I checked his pulse. He was limp. Then why is he gone? They stared at each other, the silence between them growing so loud it rang in my ears from the panic room feed. I watched from the monitor, my finger hovering over the record button, even though it was already recording. I wanted to feel like I had control of something. Of this. Then Delilah screamed. It wasn't rage. It was realization. Her voice cracked like glass. If he dies before midnight, we lose everything. Ronan froze, the meaning hitting him at the same time. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted toward the grandfather clock in the main hallway. 11:43 p.m. If he dies now, and they find his body after, she stammered, panic turning her voice into static. They'll rule it suspicious. They'll freeze the transfer, Ronan muttered, stepping back, already calculating damage. No, 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 Delilah snapped, pacing. If he's dead, we lose the estate. We lose the Maddox account. The trust goes into litigation. They'll stall it for years. Then we find him and finish it after midnight, Ronan said, his voice sharpening. Wait until it's safe. Delilah stopped in her tracks and looked at him. That means he's still alive. Silence. Ronan's eyes shifted. It means he outplayed us. No, she whispered. He couldn't have. But the certainty was gone from her voice. The arrogance had bled out. She was scared. The mighty Delilah Maddox, queen of poise, was rattled. They began checking places they hadn't bothered to earlier. Guest bathrooms, closets, even under the beds, as if I'd crawled under like a frightened child. They started yelling my name, half command, half Hail Mary. Grayson, Grayson, if you can hear me, come out. I swear, this is a misunderstanding. Ronan added a performance of his own. We just want to talk. You're sick, man. We can help. It was almost comedic. Almost. But I wasn't laughing. At 11:49 p.m., they stood in the middle of the living room, defeated. Delilah turned her face toward the ceiling and shouted, What do you want from me? I whispered into the burner mic. Everything you planned for me. Then I clicked upload on the final folder labeled 11:40, their last hunt. And I waited. They paced like caged animals. At 11:53 p.m., Delilah grabbed her phone and made a call. Clarence, it's me. Delay the cremation documents. No, something's wrong. I don't care what you have to do. Stall them. Lie. Tell them there's been a mistake. She paused, then shouted into the receiver. Because I don't know where his body is, that's why. Ronan sat on the edge of the couch and dropped his face into his hands. We should have used the syringe earlier, he muttered. We should have gone faster. Delilah spun toward him. Do you think I care about why? Delilah turned. Her voice was sharp as frost. We better pray he's not alive. Because that would mean everything they'd done. Every whispered lie, every forged signature, every stolen second, would collapse. And then it happened. The grandfather clock began its chime. Once. Twice. 3 times. Delilah's mouth fell open. 4. 5. 6. Ronan backed up toward the fireplace, blinking like the world was tilting. 7. 8, 9. Delilah whispered, no, no, not yet. 10, 11, 12. The final chime rang out like the swing of a judge's gavel. 12:01 a.m. I was still alive. And the money? It was mine. Irrevocably, uncontestably, legally mine. The Maddox inheritance. The business rights. The offshore reserves. All of it. At 12:05 a.m., the driveway lit up with two sets of headlights. Black SUVs pulled in, tires crunching on the gravel like thunder. Delilah turned, watching them through the glass. No, she breathed. No, that's not. Doors slammed. Federal agents stepped out. So did two men in suits I recognized from the trust board. And then Marla, unshaken, briefcase in hand, stepping forward like she'd been preparing for this walk her whole life. Delilah sprinted to the door, throwing it open and stumbling onto the porch. He's gone. He's dead, she screamed. I found his robe by the fountain. He must have fallen. Please. I stepped out of the shadows of the corridor behind her, the camera in my hand. My voice cut through the chaos. Not yet. She turned. Her mouth fell open. And for the first time in her life, Delilah Maddox had no performance ready. No lie on her lips. No mask to wear. The rage didn't bubble, it erupted. You bastard, she hissed. You tricked me. No, I said quietly. You revealed yourself. I just recorded it. Marla raised her hand. Delilah Maddox, by the authority of the Maddox estate trustees and in conjunction with federal agents, you are under investigation for attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Delilah didn't cry. She didn't plead. She stared at me like I was the ghost of a king she tried to bury, only to find him standing at the gates of his own palace. And the look on her face wasn't guilt. It was pure, white-hot loss. The kind that knows the game is over. And she lost. 12 chimes. That's what saved my life. 12 slow, echoing chimes from the grandfather clock in the hallway, each one slicing through the mansion like a scalpel through flesh. I counted them in my head, barely breathing. Every toll dragged me further from death and closer to power. And by the time the 12th one rang out and silence reclaimed the house, I knew I had made it. I had survived until midnight. The inheritance was mine. Not Delilah's. Not Ronan's. Not anybody's but mine. At 12:01 a.m., I stood inside the panic room, drenched in sweat, my fingers trembling but firm around the grip of the hidden camera. I watched the feeds for monitors, each showing a different slice of the estate. Delilah paced across the foyer like a caged animal, her robe clinging to her back, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. Ronan lingered behind her like a man beginning to taste ash where gold used to be. And then the world shifted again. Two SUVs rolled into the circular driveway, their black sheen glinting under the moonlight. The quiet crunch of tires over gravel sent Delilah scrambling toward the front door. I saw her face when the headlights hit. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even confusion. It was calculation. She stepped outside barefoot, gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. They're here early, she muttered. Ronan appeared beside her, and I could see the moment he realized things had gone off script. This wasn't the smooth, silent handoff they'd envisioned. This wasn't Delilah clutching a forged death certificate while a body was discreetly wheeled out. This was an intervention. From behind the glass wall, I watched them both break in real time. The first agent stepped out. Gray suit, square shoulders, eyes sharp and scanning. He flashed his credentials before saying a word. The second was a woman, taller, sterner, clipboard in hand. And behind them came Marla. God, Marla. She looked calm, immaculately dressed, and deadlier than either of them. Her heels tapped against the stone like a metronome marking the end of a symphony Delilah thought she was conducting. Delilah raised a hand. Officers, please, you're here because something terrible's happened. That's when I stepped out of the house. From the shadows of the east corridor, I emerged. I didn't speak at first. I let the camera in my hand do the talking. The agents turned, their expression shifting just slightly. Delilah froze. Ronan made a small noise behind her, something between a gasp and a whimper. She stared at me like I was a ghost. Her eyes scanned my body, looking for blood, bruises, any sign that I had crawled back from the dead. And when she found nothing, when she saw me standing upright, eyes sharp, hands steady, our mask cracked. You, she whispered, voice shaking. You're alive, I finished. Then I raised the camera. I've been recording, I said calmly, since 9:33 p.m. Audio, video, correspondence logs. I have phone calls, camera feeds, voice memos, backup emails. The works. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Marla stepped forward, unsnapping the briefcase. This is footage from inside the Maddox estate. We have evidence of premeditated murder, conspiracy to defraud the trust, attempted financial theft, and obstruction. Mr. Maddox is the surviving party and rightful heir. All actions henceforth fall under federal scrutiny. Delilah's face contorted. For a moment, I thought she might break, collapse in tears, beg, plead. But instead, she did the one thing I never expected. She smiled. A small, cold, venomous thing. "So what now, Grayson?" she hissed. "You humiliate me? Parade me around like a trophy for the board to gawk at? You really think this changes anything?" I stared at her, then looked at the agents. It changes everything. Agent Keene, tall, silent, stepped forward with cuffs. Delilah slapped him. The sound echoed across the driveway. "Don't touch me," she shrieked. "He tricked me. He's been planning this. You think he's innocent? You don't know the things he's done." "I know you poisoned him," Marla said flatly. "And I know what was in your USB drive. The offshore accounts. The falsified medical files. The emails with Clarence. Shall I continue?" Delilah backed away, lips trembling. "No, you don't understand," she said, voice faltering for the first time. It was just talk. We weren't going to go through with it. It was pressure. He was difficult. Controlling. You don't know how he... We have recordings," Marla repeated. "Including your 'he'll never survive this' comment." Twice. The fight left her eyes like a tide receding all at once. She turned toward me, and for the briefest second, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Honesty. Not love. Not regret. Just the quiet acknowledgement of defeat. "Why didn't you die?" she asked, not in anger, but disbelief. "Because I've always been 2 steps ahead," I said. "You just thought the money made me soft." Ronan tried to run. He didn't even make it past the hedges. A second team tackled him and pinned him to the lawn. He screamed something about lawyers, about being coerced. But it didn't matter. The footage was already playing. Inside the parlor, the flat screen flickered to life as the Maddox Trust Board, watching remotely via live stream, observed everything. Every file I uploaded, every video, every whisper Delilah uttered in the dark. I watched their faces appear in the corner of the feed. Some looked stunned, others furious. A few simply nodded. When the final clip ended, Marla turned toward me. "Anything you'd like to say to the board, Mr. Maddox?" I looked at the camera, at the trustees who'd questioned whether I was too young, too naive, too in love to manage the legacy my grandfather built. "She thought I wouldn't survive," I said, voice steady. She was wrong. Marla closed the laptop. The agents read Delilah her rights. She didn't resist now. The fight had gone out of her entirely. As they walked her to the SUV, she turned to look at me one last time. And I didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't say a word, because there was nothing left to say. The woman I married was gone. The woman who stood before me had never existed. But I did. And as the door shut behind her and the SUV pulled away into the dark, I finally exhaled. Midnight had come and gone. And I was still standing. Ronan made it 5 steps. Maybe 6. He bolted the moment the agents turned to cuff Delilah, scrambling across the lawn like a dog tearing through a screen door. He nearly made it to the edge of the hedge maze, but Agent Keene was faster. Silent, methodical, brutal in his efficiency. Ronan hit the grass hard with a grunt, his face pressed into the dirt, wrist twisted behind his back, shouting curses that no one took seriously. "Let me go. I didn't do anything. It was her. She made me. She said it was clean." The agents didn't even answer him. They read him his rights in that flat, practiced tone federal officers have, like they've heard every excuse before and already know how the story ends. Delilah, still cuffed, watched him with quiet disdain. Her calm returned not as fear ebbed, but as the reality of exposure set in. I recognized it, the way she steadied her breath, the way her chin lifted half an inch. She was calculating the next phase. If she couldn't win through seduction or subterfuge, maybe she'd try reinvention. Victimhood. Marla turned to me. "Board members are requesting a final confirmation from you directly. We've received all digital evidence. This is your moment, Grayson." I nodded. We stepped back into the parlor, where the screen still cast its glow against the walls that once echoed with fake laughter and shallow dinner parties. Now, it served a different purpose. Now, it illuminated truth. The board's live stream was still active, 8 faces across the screen, arranged in a grid like the jury they never wanted to be. Each one connected to the Maddox legacy, each one holding a portion of its fate in their hands. Mr. Maddox came the voice of Lydia Hawthorne, senior trustee and longtime advisor to my grandfather. Her expression was unreadable. We've reviewed the submitted footage, cross-referenced timestamps, and confirmed transmission of the inheritance at 12:01 a.m. Your survival, paired with this evidence, satisfies all clauses in the Maddox Trust. But for the record, do you confirm that this betrayal was known and personally experienced? I stepped forward, the camera now facing me from the mantel. My name is Grayson Maddox, I began. My wife, Delilah Maddox, attempted to murder me on the evening of July 19th. She did so knowingly, intentionally, and in cooperation with a man named Ronan, whom she paid to forge medical documentation and facilitate a death certificate. Their motive was to gain control of the Maddox inheritance, which would have passed entirely to her if I had died before midnight. I am alive. I am testifying now, and I am submitting every ounce of proof as a matter of public and legal record. I paused and met the eyes on the screen. She said I'd never survive this, I added. She was wrong. One by one, the board members gave a slight nod. Then Lydia closed her binder. Mr. Maddox, the trust stands with you. The inheritance is yours, irrevocably, and you are now its full executor. The screen dimmed. It was done. Behind me, I heard Delilah scoff. I turned to find her seated on the edge of the couch, wrists cuffed in front of her now. A federal agent stood watch nearby. Her robe was torn at the shoulder, one strap dangling uselessly. She looked less like the woman who used to glide through galas and more like someone caught stealing chips from a casino cage. You smug bastard, she muttered. All that surveillance. All those secret files. Were you planning this the whole time? No, I said. But I was prepared. You made sure of that. She tilted her head and studied me, like she was trying to find a crack in the armor. You always needed to be the smartest guy in the room. The control freak. The planner. No wonder I couldn't breathe. I stepped closer. You could have breathed freely beside me every day. You chose to smother us both for money. She didn't reply, but the look in her eyes said it all. There was no remorse. No shock. Just the cold, clinical silence of someone who'd lost a game they thought was rigged in their favor. Marla joined me near the doorway. They'll both be held pending charges, attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. We've looped in the state attorney and DOJ. The trust private legal team will also file a civil suit to bar any future claims from either of them. Good, I said, without emotion. But something tugged at me then. Not pity, not forgiveness. Just a need to ask one final question. I turned back to Delilah. Why? She looked up. Why? She repeated, blinking. I gave you everything. A home. A life. Trust. Was that not enough? She smirked. Not the kind that hides pain. The kind that reveals rot. You gave me a gilded cage, Grayson. A legacy I didn't build, surrounded by your dead grandfather's rules, your staff watching my every move, and your lawyer checking our bank statements like a prison guard. I wanted my own life. You had it. No, she said. I had yours. And for a brief second, she looked small. Not vulnerable. Just reduced. Like the house had finally caught up to her weight. I nodded slowly. Then I guess you finally got what you wanted, I said. Your own story, just not the ending you planned. Agents moved in and led her outside. She didn't look back. Neither did Ronan as they pushed him into the second SUV. The doors slammed. Engine started. And they were gone. Marla and I stood alone in the foyer of the Maddox estate, the silence now heavier than any confrontation. You okay? She asked. No, I admitted. But I will be. She smiled faintly. You were smart to trust your instincts. Most don't. Not until it's too late. I stared at the camera still recording from the mantel. It was too late, I said. But I came back anyway. Marla nodded once, like she understood something most people wouldn't. Then she left to make final calls, leaving me alone in the house I'd nearly died in. I wandered through it then, room by room. The kitchen. The den. The hallway where I first heard Delilah whisper into her phone. Each place carried a memory, a wound, a lesson. And in the mirror of the guest bath, I saw the man who survived it. Grayson Maddox. Alive. Changed. And ready to write a new story. One without poison in the tea or lies in the sheets. This time, the story would begin with truth. And end with purpose. 6 months later, the estate no longer felt like a mausoleum. The air was different, not lighter, not warmer, but clearer, like the poison had finally been flushed out. The marble floors gleamed the same, the chandeliers still caught the morning sun like falling diamonds, but everything meant something different now. Every echo in the hall reminded me I'd been silenced once, and I wouldn't be again. The Maddox Foundation launched on a rainy October morning. The press gathered under the awning outside the new downtown headquarters. It was smaller than the estate, humbler than most imagined a Maddox office would be. That was by design. I didn't want opulence. I wanted intent. The foundation focused on two things: victim advocacy and financial abuse recovery. Two worlds that rarely intersected publicly but often danced in the dark, just like Delilah and Ronan had. I knew firsthand what it meant to be the target of charm wrapped around a blade. I knew how quietly someone could carve out your voice while kissing your forehead. This place was built for people like me, people who almost didn't make it. Marla sat on the board. She'd stayed close, loyal in the ways that mattered. She still wore her dark suits and made coffee like war plans, black, strong, no sugar, but I'd grown to see her not just as my lawyer, but as someone who believed. Not in money, not even in me, but in justice. "I'm proud of what you've built," she told me after our first grant was issued to a woman who'd escaped her abusive husband with nothing but a flash drive and a toothbrush. Charles would be, too. That name, Charles Maddox, still carried weight. He was the shadow I'd lived under for so long, the man who turned suspicion into a lifestyle, who built his empire on contingency plans and trust-no-one philosophies. For years, I thought he was just cold. Now, I knew better. He wasn't cold. He was prepared, like I had to be. I didn't just run the foundation. I worked it. Every case that crossed our threshold, I reviewed. Every email flagged with danger, I read. There were more Delilahs in the world than I ever imagined. More Ronans. Some wore satin robes. Others wore lab coats, or wedding rings, or designer shoes. But they all had one thing in common: control. They fed on silence. So I decided to make noise. We started a podcast, The Survivor's Ledger. I was the anonymous host for the first 5 episodes, voice filtered through software, names redacted. The stories we told weren't easy, but they were necessary. And soon, survivors started finding us, by word of mouth, by desperation, by accident. One message stood out. A man named Ezra from Portland. His wife drained his business accounts under the guise of joint planning, then had her brother fake a dementia diagnosis so she could gain conservatorship. He'd escaped with his dignity and a stack of journals. I flew him out. He sat across from me in the foundation office, trembling as he told me his story. And when he finished, he looked at me like I was someone who knew the language of loss. "How'd you survive it?" he asked. I thought about that for a long moment. "By remembering who I was before they made me question it," I said. "And by becoming someone they couldn't predict." The door opened then. Agent Keene stepped in. He wasn't in uniform. These days, he worked task forces on coercive control and financial fraud. He and I had an understanding. He didn't coddle me. I didn't pretend the past didn't still rattle around in my chest. "We got a hit," he said, tossing a file on my desk. 2 states over. Woman. 3 husbands. 1 inheritance. All under investigation now. I opened the file. The pattern was familiar. So familiar it made my teeth clench. "Let's get her name to our legal team," I said. He nodded once and left the room. Ezra watched it all in silence. "You're not just helping people," he said after a beat. "You're hunting the ones who almost killed you." I gave him a small smile. "No," I said. "I'm hunting the ones who think they can still get away with it." Outside, rain tapped the window gently. But I didn't hear it. Not really. My ears were tuned for something else now, lies disguised as affection, danger whispered in satin voices. I still didn't sleep much. But when I didn't dream of Delilah anymore. I dreamed of the moment I stood in the dark, my body broken, my trust shattered, and whispered back, "He'll never survive this?" She was right. He didn't. But I did.